Before we went on that break, we told you about Kehinde Fadipe, a writer, actress, and director who recently wrote in such tremendous heat a peculiarly titled book, which she will now talk to us about. Good morning, Kehinde, and you're welcome to the morning show.
Thank you.
Good to have you in the studio.
Nice to be here.
All right. In such a tremendous heat, that's the title, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And that's your first novel, I believe?
Yes, that's my first.
Okay, I know that we've experienced a bit of heat here in Nigeria lately. What heat are we talking about in this book? Tell us about this book generally, and then give us a hint about how you got to this point, given that you are a writer, you are a dramatist, I believe, an actress, and a director. Why a novel, and what was it trying to say?
Well, the book is about 3 Nigerian women living in Singapore. So it was trying to capture some of my experiences, but also the different types of women I was meeting in Asia. We all come from different walks of life, but most people are there to work. They're raising families, and I was just very intrigued by how different we all were. But for me personally, I was always writing first. I did train as an actress. And so I was writing scripts, writing plays, but I always wanted to publish a book. I think it was just a dream that I had since I was a child. It's a dream that many people have, many people I've met want to write. And so when I moved to Singapore and took a break from acting, I had to find a creative outlet. I knew I wanted to publish, so I sort of started that journey of joining a writers group, meeting other writers, learning how to write fiction. It was a challenge that, that I wanted to kind of take on. And that's brought me to this point now, writing the book about 7 years on and off, so quite a long time.
7 years.
Yeah, 7 years. It is a long time.
And these 3 women, you said that you found out that you guys are all different.
Yeah.
I'd like you to tell us your experience, about living in Singapore as a Nigerian woman with these beautiful braids that you have on.
Thank you. I actually had these made here, but thank you. So one of the characters is a lawyer. And I meet a lot of Nigerian women in Singapore, African women in general, who are bankers and lawyers and work in the corporate field. And I was very interested, about their experiences. I myself don't work in corporate, but I was very interested in the dynamics of navigating that space, usually as the only Black person. So one of the characters is a lawyer. Another character is a banker who has a shopping addiction and also has some family dynamics that are quite difficult that she's running away from. And then the third character, who is Nigerian American, is a pianist. And she has left America to move to Singapore with her husband, and their marriage is on the rocks. So the 3 women become friends when a Nigerian guy moves to Singapore, and he is sort of the catalyst for a lot of chaos that happens in the book. So it is a light book, but there are some important topics and themes that come out of the story, and they sort of develop an unlikely friendship that gets tested through the book.
I would say I'm surprised that a Nigerian man would be the source of the chaos.
Not surprised, right?
But I want to ask about your writing process, because you said it did take 7 years. So what was the process like for you?
Well, honestly, the process was one of learning how to write fiction. I'm working on my second book now. It's not going to take that long. But with the first one, it was learning really how to develop a narrative arc, how to develop characters, how to make them realistic and detailed. Also just trying to find time to write, because I was working full time, I was teaching, I have 2 kids, so that was also quite challenging. Just staying focused was a big challenge. And then I joined a writers group, so I started to get great feedback from what was actually impacting. And then there comes a point where you have to make a decision of who you're writing for. Are you writing for as a hobby? Is it just pleasure, or do you actually want to get published? So then the journey of learning about the publishing industry, how editors work, how agents work, that was also part of why it took so long. And then, during COVID actually was when I got my agent. So sometimes, life kind of times things and they're out of your hands. And that was a difficult year, but in some ways it was quite a positive year in that a lot of agents were sitting at home with nothing to do. Publishing had slowed down and they were looking for books. So the reason it took so long was because I was learning how to write and also how the industry works. But now I probably will take a couple of years for each book, I think.
Okay, so it wasn't self-published. You got a publisher.
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
yes.
that's actually great. I mean, congratulations.
Yeah,
so because I was going to ask you, you're welcome, about the marketing plans for the book across continents, Singapore, Nigeria, I believe, and of course, to an extent maybe the UK. What are the plans and how is it doing in the market at this time?
Well, it's been published in the UK and the Commonwealth is still the term that publishing uses, quite an old-fashioned term, which includes Singapore, Nigeria, under In Such Tremendous Heat. We actually have a different title in America, which I won't say so that people don't get confused. But marketing-wise, it's been quite interesting because, you know, one of the questions of diversity is something that comes up a lot when I talk to people. In Singapore, obviously, you know, for me, I might be the first black writer that a lot of people in Singapore are reading, or, you know, they're sort of learning about the experiences of Nigerians and Africans, not just in Singapore, but their history, because the history that the characters bring is quite important in the book. You know, some of them grew up in Nigeria, so I talk about that a little bit. But, you know, in England, we obviously have a lot more diverse writers, although I think something that's quite interesting from Nigeria is the definition of diversity, you know, because a lot of our writers are Yoruba or Igbo. So I asked myself, is that really diverse, you know, when you actually come out of Nigeria? One of my characters is Tiv, so I purposefully made her from that ethnic group because I wanted to have, you know, more of a representation of different types of Nigerian women.
What do you know about that culture?
I learned a lot. I did a lot of research, and that was something that I felt like I didn't learn enough growing up. So I wanted to make that her history, and also she goes on a journey to find out about her family and her background. She grew up in the States and got separated from her wider family. So for readers in America, readers in England, I also wanted them to know that there are lots of tribes and there are lots of different types of people in Nigeria, and we sometimes don't know enough about ourselves. So that sort of answers your question about marketing. Is also for me an important factor about that is different types of Nigerians.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And you are a true Lagosian.
I am.
You're a Lagosian.
Yes.
I'd like you to share your journey. I mean, why Singapore? Did you grow up in Lagos and you moved to Singapore? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I grew up in Lagos. I was born in London, but I moved back to Lagos pretty much immediately and moved to England when I was 14. So my formative years were definitely here. My second book is actually set in Lagos. And then I moved to Singapore when I was 28, 29. So I spent pretty much roughly the same amount of time in Nigeria, in England. I've been in Singapore about 11 years now, so quite a long time. But for me, I think, you know, my journey has always been one of trying to find out what it is I want to do. I enjoy doing many different things, and when I was growing up, you always had to kind of choose one. And now I feel like the world has changed. We expect people to do more than one thing, you know, to be a hyphenate. So that really does work for me. I also write screenplays and scripts. So the book is actually being adapted for the screen. It's early days, but I think being able to write about, I like to call myself a global storyteller, being able to write about stories from different parts of the world and make them authentic, and to admit what I don't know and to be curious about what I don't know is what drives me as an artist.
Beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to ask, because you said you learned the process of writing and you learned about the industry. Do you have any advice for any young writers who, you know, working on their first book? What did you learn about the industry that I think people wouldn't normally know about?
Well, there's two parts to that. The first thing I would say is find a writers group or create a writers group. There are a lot of great book clubs, and I've met with great book clubs here in Lagos, but find other writers, and they don't have to be friends. Maybe it's better if they're not friends, but find other writers who also are writing and can give you feedback, because that is what changed everything for me, was being able to find people who were writing and then to see how they were progressing, to see that it was possible, to learn about different genres. Going into bookshops, go to the back of the books and just look at who writers think. They will thank their agents, they will thank their publishers. You start to kind of get a sense of who's who, make a note, do your research. I don't think you always have to go on an expensive writing course. I think that what you need to do is take the time to learn what agents are looking for, and different agents are looking for different types of books. So when you're sending your work out, you know, you really want to conserve your energy and send it to agents that are looking for that. Is it contemporary fiction? Is it crime? Is it YA, young adult? So there's a lot of great people on YouTube. So go onto YouTube. At the back of my book, I thank YouTubers, specific YouTubers that I learned a lot from, who I felt democratized the process for me. So one thing I will say about publishing is they are always looking for good books. You know, I didn't know anyone in the publishing industry. There were no contacts. It was really about finding an agent who likes your work, who is ready, ready and willing to help you edit it, and just to keep going. You know.
All right. Tell us a bit more about the what the literary and the creative space in Singapore represent for an African writer or an African creative, like your good self. I'm asking because I had the opportunity to attend the Singapore Art Week in January of 2019.
Nice.
It was vibrant, but it was also small, small in a cozy kind of a way, sorry. So how has it been for you in terms of engagement with that space there, and in terms of, attaining your potential as somebody who is not necessarily like the other people over there?
I think small and cozy is a great way of describing it. I do think it's what you make of it. Singapore is a great country, but it's definitely very invested in Singaporean artists and writers, and you can kind of make your space there. But for me, it's not about being trapped where I am geographically. I think it's really important that, I connect with readers in Nigeria, in America, in the UK, and it is what you make of it. That's what I believe. But so I try not to just think of myself as someone who's just based in Singapore. I work remotely a lot. I wake up in the middle of the night all the time to work with people on Zoom, and that's just part of, I think, the future. So, there are going to always be pros and cons. I think a writer based in Nigeria will have their pros and their cons. Someone based in the UK, you have all sorts of, literary opportunities, but they're also maybe limited by the type of stories they can tell. So I do think it is what you make of it. I don't necessarily have a plan as to how it's going to go, but I intend to make the most of any opportunities and then create what you can.
Do you act in Singapore?
I don't, actually. I haven't done an acting job in a while. I've been focusing mainly on writing and directing.
Okay.
And then, maybe I'll write myself a little part in something.
That'd be nice.
And so this book is going to be adapted into a screenplay?
Yes, it's going to be adapted into TV.
Into TV, you
yes,
said.
a TV series.
And, where are your characters going to be from? I mean, have you had conversations with that?
I haven't. I have an idea about casting. I don't know how much sway I will have, but I'm definitely very excited about some specific Nigerian actors, especially the character, the guy who moves to Singapore.
Yeah.
I definitely have a very clear idea of what he looks like, but and a particular actor in mind. But again, I don't know if I will have.
So did he cause wahala between these three women?
He does, and he does so obliviously, but he does.
Like Adeswa said, she was not surprised that it would be a man. Well,
once again, we're the villain, isn't it?
You're always the villain.
You talk a lot about diversity, and I'm a historian, and I love that you looked for the TIV culture and you learned yourself, you did your research yourself. Was that part difficult, learning about a culture you might not be familiar with or know people from? And what other things did you learn about Nigeria in that process that helped with your book?
Specifically with the TIV culture, it wasn't easy. There's not a lot of stuff online. I did have a friend who's TIV, so we had some conversations. I have a character who's also Igbo, so I had a lot of conversations with friends who were Igbo because I wanted to understand there's a particular family dynamic that happens. There's something that happens with her father when he passes away. So I really wanted to understand some of the not just the law in Nigeria, but specifically the ethnic and cultural laws of what would happen if somebody passed away without a will. This is sort of a backdrop. So a lot of it was conversations that I had, and a lot of research online, YouTube, looking for interviews, news stories. And then what did I learn about Nigeria in the process? A lot of things. One of the characters, her mother and her father met during the Festac festival in, I think it's 77. So I did a lot of research for that. And so sometimes it was very specific things of trying to explain how people came together, what separated them. A lot of it was used from my upbringing in Lagos. But when there were specific things from people who were from different tribes, it was conversations mainly, and a little bit of research online.
When you seek or try to adapt your stories for the screen, either for TV or for a feature film, what sort of film do you have in mind to communicate? I'm asking because I'm interested in your thoughts around Nollywood and the type of movies that we make. Will that be your goal, when you want to adapt some of your stories? So
I think we're talking about genre here in terms of where would this fit with what's currently
genre and also in terms of direction, in terms of the type of movie generally,
Yeah, it's interesting.
Except you see Nollywood as a genre, which I don't. But I mean, give me your thoughts on it.
No, I think that many times I think about amalgamation. So it's this meets this. When you're creating something new, you're trying not to make something that's already existing, but you're trying to say, okay, maybe it's these are not Nollywood shows, but maybe it's The White Lotus meets Beef. These are two great TV shows that I like. Or maybe it's this meets, so you're trying to find the connection because, it's pretty much an all-black cast. It's a Nigerian cast, but in Asia. So it's never been done before. It's very, very, this is very, very new. Mainly when I'm adapting, I'm thinking about what is the story engine? What is driving you through the story? Because, whether it's going to be one season or multi-seasons, there's got to be something that keeps the audience coming episode after episode after episode. So that's just where we're at. We're not so much at the final end where we're sort of marketing it, but more trying to figure out what is the driving force in the story. So it's still early days.
All right, we'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kehinde Fadipe,
Thank
author
you.
of In Such Tremendous Heat. We wish you good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us.